Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel, where everything you're about to hear and see has been done in one take. I'm your host, the One Take Man. Uh, Today's video will be released or published around the 1 year anniversary of me leaving the party that I had joined 4 years, four and a bit years before that. And in order to mark the occasion, I thought I would make a video talking about my personal political development. My activity within the party will not be included within that, within that timeline because it is partly because it is very much its own thing, independent of or okay, not independent, but somewhat removed from the rest of my political journey. Second of all, because I actually have some material about it on my phone, and I don't think I can access that while I'm filming. So, for that reason, that will be its own video that will come out next week. Instead, I want to talk about how I've come to hold and gain, the political opinions that I currently have gained and hold, and how those have developed throughout my life. And in case you're wondering, this video is going to be completely off the cuff. I have no script. So if it's gonna come across a little bit chaotic, well, first of all, I'm sorry about that. Second of all, it would actually be on brand, given that is also how I received my own political education. There wasn't really a lot of continuity. There were just various bits and pieces that I had to collect in order to build my own vision and my own understanding of this social phenomenon known as politics. Uh, anyway, with that disclaimer out of the way, it's time I started with a look at right at the beginning when I was a boy growing up in post December Romania, which was a country that was a member of the Warsaw Pact and therefore had affiliations with a certain with a certain aspect, with a certain portion of the world, and it is those associations that now have various ramifications upon the rest of the world, and how that handles itself. But I digress. I might get into that later. I might not. For now, what you need to know is that the uh, political uh, is that the political definition that the political system that defined that aspect of the world during the course of its history was referred to as communism, for better or for worse. And and it is under the and it is within that backdrop of uh, communism is bad and we need to uh, get our own stuff done, that I or that collective action is bad, and that things need to be done on our own is something I've uh, grown up with, and it is also something I've kind of tried to uh, get in touch with myself, and it is to that end that I've done that I as at least I as a young boy tried to try to get in touch with and make part of myself. I didn't really associate it with and the sun's come out. I didn't really associate it, politically. I just thought this was what needed to be done. Uh, this is how I grow up. Uh, this is how a life well lived is supposed to look like. And part of that life well lived means learning, assimilating things around you, and uh, putting them into practice, or seeking to understand them in order to be able to translate them uh, at some later point. I was a little bit too focused on book learning. Now, now that I look back on it, but I was a dumb kid who didn't know any better. So that's something that occurred. Over time, however, there was a little bit of a little bit of a gray area developed within that space as as people were starting to as the society around me started to grow more accustomed to uh, you know capitalism and whatnot, and there were some discussions on the things that were better during the Ceausescu regime compared to the contemporary one, and how exactly that ended up shaping them. But really it was more really, to me at least, it was more just background noise. I was still very preoccupied just being just being a nerd and just getting a lot of as much just getting book learning done, because I thought book learning would be the most important thing in my life going forward. I thought that would be the thing that opens doors for me, and that would be how I would go on to prove myself. I think the most long lasting political consequence that emerged from that was me being was me becoming an atheist at age 13, because by that point I had already I had already learned how to how to reason, how to sparse out information, and I had received information from lots of different sources. And and while I had my and while I had my issues with the church canon before that, it really was age 13 when I first was able to put into words that this ain't it. This is not something that is useful or helpful or anything like that. So for that, and so yeah, after that point, I became atheistic, and and this is also more or less the point when the next development uh, of uh, political outlook my political outlook emerged, because uh, also at the time I was watching a press commentary show, so to speak, where there was where there was a guy who would uh, read out newspapers and comment upon the news he would read. For those of you who are a certain age, you might remember Mircea Badea from In the Mouth of the Press. I think he's actually still active, but he has become very much a borderline fash parody of himself right now. At the time he was a little bit more incisive, or at least, or maybe it was just me being a dumb kid, uh, thinking that he was actually more incisive and actually had some good points. And uh, and there was one thing that I think really I can say uh, broke my broke my political virginity, so to speak. Something that brought me to a new level of awareness. That namely that a lot of politicians in Romania talk about doctrines and ideologies, but they don't really follow them. It's all corruption. And from that from that realization, I that really created the first major split in terms of how I understood politics. Namely, there was a right way to do politics, and by that I mean public administration, and then there was a wrong way to do it, which is summed up by that word corruption, and it is summed up by doing things that don't benefit uh, the general populace, but that benefit individual politicians or their families primarily. If anyone else gets any benefit, it's incidental rather than deliberate. And I think that really so yeah I was so yeah on the one hand uh, there was incompetence, and on the other hand there was technocracy, because I when gonna have gone on to consider politics as like the um, as simply public administration, as in and in order to have a in order to have uh, good living conditions, there need to be certain a certain set of priorities and laws put in place in order to make that happen. What exactly that was is could somewhat vary, but in principle I still had that technocratic approach to politics, that there was a right way to do it, and it was really all a matter of nuance, of finding the correct policy, the best possible taxes in the optimal amount, and then once that would be more or less the end of politics. That would be the point where everyone would just be able to live their best life, and there would occasionally be corruption. Then that would have to be stamped out. As I was already an atheist, I have to say I kind of to some extent associated that corruption with religious thought. And in my defense, the Romanian Orthodox Church is very much a corrupt institution, and has used the wealth it has been able to accumulate in order to obtain various political favors. And so I was and so I saw uh, maybe not all, but quite a bit of religious thought as being an enabler of corruption. I still played around with with religious thought, but more as a philosophical concept. But more precisely, looking at the ought of the of religions rather than the is of religions, because as far as I was concerned, I still wanted to keep that in the still wanted to keep if I were to talk about religions, I would rather keep those discussions in the plane of ideas rather than the plane of realizations, where I found myself for the most part very disappointed by religions. My my mother is still very much a Christian, and she would often tell me about examples of various individual priests um, and connected institutions that would do charity work or start orphanages or stuff like that. But really, those are I saw those as exceptions that prove the rule. Like, and just because one person associated with the clergy did something right doesn't mean that the clergy itself is actually something helpful or meaningful. So yeah, I pretty much graduated high school and entered university as a you know through that like looking at politics through that technocratic lens. Where the right combination of policies is something that needed to be is something people needed to strive towards in order to in order to lead a successful life, in order for the general public to be able to have the conditions to lead their most successful lives. And it is that level of conviction that kind of also carried me through to that also carried me through my studies, and it is what made me choose engineering, because I wanted to uh, do the right thing. I wanted to uh, I saw my role within society as being able to as someone who would uh, as someone who as someone who could establish the conditions uh, for a better living. And I thought engineering would be the avenue through which I would be able to do that. Other people in my generation were more interested in sorry about that. Other people within my generation, as far as I can tell, were more interested in various economic directions. Wanted to pursue economic studies, economic universities. But honestly, those were just I was honestly this is one place where where my father actually came to influence me, because economics was just was just moving around what engineering produced. So I thought being at the base of that would allow, would be more productive and would allow for a would allow for a would allow for uh, uh, would be a better avenue towards uh, towards improving society as a whole. And as I was a young student around around the early 2010s. Well, first of all, Romania was going through its awakening, for its civil society awakening, where there were more protest movements and uh, more campaigning, more petitioning from grassroots level started to emerge. So I was very happy by that, and I was to some extent very much swept up by that. Um, and also uh, and also as a young student who really only had YouTube and no TV. I still don't have a TV. That's more, but that's by choice rather than by rather than due to poverty. I started watching a lot of atheist YouTubers because because first of all, I agreed with them. Keep in mind, I myself adopted technocratic principles and was opposed to corruption, and I saw clergy or any church institution as as an outgrowth of corruption or an enabler of corruption. So anything that opposed that was something I also hitched my wagon to, so to speak. And it was around this time that a lot of atheist YouTubers started going anti SJW, and we're all about how feminists uh, gonna ruin society, the destroy language, make everything meaningless, etc. I have to say, while I did watch that because I was uh, partly due to the habit of watching those YouTubers, partly because I wanted to see just exactly how just exactly how ridiculous they would claim it to be. I I didn't really always see the necessity for that fury. I was like, okay, if those issues actually emerge, there are methods to deal with them. There is there like that is something that can be handled. That is something that can be addressed. There really is no need to be. There really wasn't that the need to be as vitriolic as I saw those guys to be. Um, sorry about that. Uh, Eventually, I thought maybe the guys I'm looking at, maybe the guys I'm whose opinions I'm looking into aren't really the most well formed in order to in order to really convey those impressions. So I started looking around for other for other YouTubers who were anti SJW to really see if there was a some kind of merit to that. And to that and to uh, and to that end, I found teal deer. I don't know I don't know how many of you still remember that still remember that idiot. I saw one video of him, which at the time I think was the most recent, about the pink tax, or about how products aimed at women are more expensive than products aimed at men. And there were some I've seen some videos about that before, and all of them adopted the adopted the position of products aimed at women are more expensive because they are more expensive to make, and therefore have more expensive to make because they have they have bigger, broader conditions that need to be that need to be met in order to uh, in order to be used by women. And within that video, Teal Deer kind of talked about that, like in general. And then when it came to an example, he showed two pairs of rollerblades, one for boys, one for girls. and the one for girls was 50% more expensive than for boys, even though the only difference was they were painted differently. And keep in mind, I'm an engineering student, so by then I had already gained some level of some level of knowledge and some level of understanding concerning what production entails. And I knew that a 50% difference in price could not be justified solely by a difference in color. But then Teal just ran off and was like, "See, these products are different. They should be priced differently. That's it. Stop being so annoying." And at that point, like I had another political awakening, and I was like, and and I went on to see these guys purely as uh, as hollow bullshit merchants. And while I didn't go full SJW at the time, but I realized that anti SJWs were more or less full of shit, or they were full of shit when it came to those topics. There could be other topics that might be where they might have a point, and so even though I didn't watch those videos by them, I would still, I would still look into other videos by those people. But slowly, gradually, I started to integrate, you know, more progressive or even flat out SJW videos within my, within my viewing diet, and and it is there that I gained a greater appreciation and greater understanding for the for the issues that they represented, issues that I myself also came to understand a little bit better, like the pink text, for example. Uh, a lot of that really comes with the association of male as the fault, and therefore anything for women needs to be, needs to be somehow more special, uh, more more distinctive, more and with more and more uh, and more deliberate focus put into it. It's it's what's been referred to as a benevolent misogyny, as in, no, you can't play with a boy, you're a girl, you deserve something better. I I couldn't help but realize just how just how bullshit that was, and how, and in time I saw that this was just one way of externally uh, putting women into the into some kind of box. And if if a woman wants to put herself in a box, that's that should be fine, but it should be her decision. It should not be something that is done by the general populace. And over time, I learned all the mechanisms that revolve around putting women in boxes, or not just women, but really um, all minorities, and how that shapes up. Or rather, that was a rediscovery, because because even at the time I was a history enthusiast, and I saw how um, and I saw how various influences would manifested at various points throughout history. So yeah, my mid 20s more or less a moment where I a moment where I started to relearn where I started to relearn history, and not just from the uh, A to B standpoint of we go from of going from antiquity to the modern age, and these are the things that happened, but also a more plenary understanding of these are the forces that were at play. This is how they manifested, and this is the influences they've had over over a variety of people. So I had a very informal but quite comprehensive education in terms of sociology and history, and even media literacy, but not necessarily economics. That would come in a little bit later. And from that standpoint, at least, I still very much a technocrat. I was still some extent at least, a politically a centrist, maybe a right leaning, but still more or less centrist. As I said in a dating profile I made around the time, I like growth, but I think everyone should benefit from it. Or I think everyone who contributed to it should benefit from it. Thing is when you look deep enough, you realize that pretty much everyone, to some extent, contributes to it. Like if you work somewhere and you need stuff delivered to you, well, the truck driver contributes to that. The people who build the roads that the truck driver uses also also contributed to that. So they also need their just compensation. And and that is why I was never that was why, even though I was right leaning, I never understood what right wingers typically have against taxes, because those are necessary aspects to how a society functions. If you think about it in terms of egoist altruism, you give to others so that the works of others um, go influence your own work for the better. That is something I've kind of uh, adopted into my policies, because keep in mind what I said earlier about public well-being. And therefore that is and and that is something I still held on to all throughout my brief journey that I managed to stop down the alt-right pipeline. With Sorry about that. So still, eventually, I decided to uh, research a little bit more, and it is at that point when I looked more into economics, and particularly political economics, that I saw that I understood that taxes are not uh, the only way wealth can be redistributed. It is how wealth is redistributed on a grand scale. However, the big problem uh, with uh, with the blog that fell a few years before my birth, was that it only knew how to redistribute at a large scale. That is the only level at which redistribution occurred. And the people who did a redistributing, cut themselves bigger slices of the pie, which which ultimately led to a lot of problems down the pipeline, so to speak. And I learned that there are more alternatives than just working for a boss or working for a state. And beyond entrepreneurship, there was also like cooperative ownership, and that cooperative ownership can also exist within a market economy, rather than a planned one. Still I more or less adopted a still more or less adopted the technocratic principle, and those are just okay. These are things to consider in general. uh, and uh, mm, and and then I filed everything that should have been avoided under corruption. Eventually, however, a third switch when it came to my political development turned over, and that switch was that corruption is not a mistake in ideology; it is an ideology. Like someone who's a theocrat, someone who wants a country to be run uh, in accordance to religious principle. Like that is someone who is wrong by perhaps my original technocratic principle. But that someone is correct according to the principle, according to a principle I would probably also consider myself following. What is the best course for most people to follow? except that person has a different definition of what counts as best. And once I had that position in mind, that turned over to how I understood a lot of politics, a lot of history, and how and how people direct their actions. They don't really they don't no they don't want to uh, do bad things. They don't want to do things that are bad deliberately. They want to do things that they consider to be good. They consider to lead to a result they find desirable, and that is more or less something I was I strive to do. Difference being we had different ideas of what goals were desirable. And nevertheless, the final point that is noteworthy when it comes to my political development actually came about 4 years ago, as of the time this video's release, when I was fired from from a job I really liked, because the because the project that job was tied to was all of a sudden canceled. And I had started absorbing some socialist communist ideas, or more precisely, some libertarian socialist and or communist ideas, and started to observe some YouTube creators within that space. And it is then that I realized that they actually have a point, and a lot of times employees are just uh, cogs on a machine, and the employers are given disproportionate amounts of power by being able to decide which cogs to keep in the machine. And yeah, that saw me that particular development saw me go communist. It wasn't exactly new information. I already knew that uh, business owners could be ruthless when it comes to when it came to accumulating their wealth. But it is really only when it happened to me that I fully realized, okay, this needs to change. This is something that needs to um, where steps need to be made, that this doesn't happen. That people are seen not just for what they can do in one narrow activity field, but in general, as but in general, what contributions they can bring to the well-being of the general society, and what it takes for them to be rewarded as such. And that is really why I leaned into uh, cooperative ownership as a means of running a company, and of ensuring long-term political and economical stability. And I also saw some various other benefits down the line, particularly aligned with uh, giving individual people a greater amount of uh, independence and decision-making capability within their own lives. That is the one thing that made states as a whole somewhat better, given republics are, in general, more stable than monarchies, or it is more advantageous to spread out uh, decision making and um, authority carrying responsibilities than have them stuck in a small hand within a small uh, circle of people. That does carry certain risks, but I think overall I think it is still worth it to disseminate that power rather than focus it. And I really want to bring that uh, to the fullest extent that still keeps a society functioning. I still to some extent retain those some of the technocratic ideals that I grew up under, but I understand that there are, but I understand that there are, but I now have a better understanding of what exactly the means are, and what exactly and exactly what devices various people have or can have um, when it comes to bringing those when it comes to bringing those to light. And it is those mechanisms that I want to bring forth, and that I want to see uh, in general, people being able to adopt for themselves, and to um, and to use them in such a way as to lead uh, their best lives. I already did various other videos where I talked about my politics, mainly political quizzes. But this is the but this is the first time where I really kind of chain it together. So if you want more details that you haven't seen here, there are various others available on my channel. I might link them somewhere either in the description or in the iCard. But for now, that is all I'm going to say. That was my video on my general political awakening. Thank you for your attention. If you've enjoyed this video, then please like it, and maybe even share it wherever you think other people will also like the video. If there is anything you'd like to add to concerning any of the revelations I've had, or your own political journey, that's what the comment section is for. And if you want to see when my next video gets released, well then please subscribe. And ideally also ring the bell or do whatever else YouTube will ask of you in order to keep you notified. I also have a main channel where I talk about uh, book-related and literature topics, a link to which you can find in the description down below, right past my social media links, which I also suggest you check out should you choose to. Additionally, you have the option of supporting me on Patreon, where depending on the level at which you pledge, you can receive various perks, such as early access to my videos and scripts, both for this channel and my second one, because yes, I also have a second channel. No, where yeah, sorry about that. What I meant was you can access you can have early access to my videos and scripts, both for this channel and the aforementioned main one. I also do this outro for my main channel, and there I call it a second one, so yeah, sorry for the confusion. Anyway, until next time, I have been the One Take Man.